Jack stood frozen, the faint glow of Sophia's phone lighting up her otherwise pristine vanity. She had left it unattended, screen unlocked, a rare lapse in her otherwise meticulous behavior. His curiosity, ignited by weeks of subtle evasiveness and late-night work emergencies, got the better of him. He swiped the screen, navigating to her contact list. There it was, Susan from HR. Harmless on the surface, but Jack wasn't buying it. The messages that followed confirmed his suspicions. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Last night was incredible. His pulse quickened. It wasn't anger at first, but the dull ache of betrayal. Sophia had been his partner for a decade, someone he trusted implicitly, but now, staring at these damning words, a switch flipped in his mind. Jack wasn't going to cry, plead, or lash out. No, he had other plans. Jack made coffee as Sophia emerged from their bedroom, her hair tousled, her expression serene. She kissed his cheek, her warmth almost disarming. "Jack, big day at work?" he asked, his tone casual. Sophia nodded, sipping her coffee. "Back-to-back meetings. Don't wait up tonight, okay? It'll be late." "Of course," Jack replied, the edges of his smile sharp. As she left, Jack turned his focus to the number saved under Susan from HR. The idea sparked. If Sophia could lie, so could he. He called the number, rehearsing the calm, yet cutting script he'd devised. A deep male voice answered. "Ah, this is Jack," he said smoothly. "Sophia's husband." There was a pause. Tom, as the voice tone identified himself, tried to mask his surprise, but Jack picked up on it. "What's this about?" Tom asked, his tone defensive. "I just wanted to have a man-to-man chat," Jack began. "Not to accuse or anything, more to warn you. Sophia's, well, let's say she has a pattern. I've seen it before." "What pattern?" Tom's curiosity was piqued, but a flicker of unease crept into his voice. "You're not the first," Jack said, letting the words hang in the air. "She's smart, gorgeous, I'll give her that. But commitment? Not her strong suit. She has a way of making you feel like you're the only one. Just thought you should know what you're dealing with." Jack could hear Tom's breath hitch. He had planted the first seed of doubt. Later that evening, Jack observed Sophia from across the dinner table. She was engrossed in her phone, smiling faintly. His stomach churned, but his resolve only hardened. This was just the beginning of his plan. In the days that followed, Jack alternated between subtle provocations. Another called Tom, this time feeding him details he knew would rile him up, lies about Sophia's supposed affairs with other colleagues. To Sophia, he played the perfect oblivious husband, even suggesting they go on a weekend getaway, just the two of them, a move that only made her more suspicious of him, though she dared not voice it. And so the chessboard was set. Jack was determined to watch as the two people who had wronged him unraveled under the weight of their mutual distrust, each suspecting the other of deception while he played the puppet master from the shadows. Jack sat at his desk late into the night, the soft hum of his computer filling the room. On the screen were tabs of research, behavioral manipulation, psychological warfare, and techniques to exploit trust. He wasn't just planning revenge, he was crafting a masterpiece. His goal was not only to end Sophia's affair, but to ensure her lover Tom turned against her so thoroughly that reconciliation would be impossible. He clicked on, and the go so thoroughly that reconciliation would be impossible. This wasn't a rash outburst of jealousy. This was strategy. He began by mapping out the key players. Sophia was cunning, yes, but predictable in her routines. Tom, on the other hand, was arrogant, a trait Jack knew he could exploit. Arrogance bred carelessness, and carelessness would be his inroad. The first step was a second call to Tom, more intimate this time. Jack used a burner phone to maintain anonymity. When Tom answered, his voice was curt, laced with suspicion. "Look, I don't know what you're trying to do here," Tom said immediately. "I'm not trying to cause problems," Jack replied smoothly. "I just think you should know what kind of person you're dealing with. I've been where you are. It doesn't end well." The calm, almost sympathetic tone disarmed Tom. "What are you talking about?" "Let's just say Sophia has a habit of branching out. You think you're the only one she's seeing? That's what I thought too once." Jack let the silence hang, long enough for Tom to fill the void with his own doubts. "I don't believe you," Tom said, but his voice wavered. "Check her phone," Jack replied, his tone casual but cutting. "You'll see what I mean." Jack hung up before Tom could respond. He didn't need to hear the fallout. He knew seeds of distrust had been sown. Meanwhile, Jack began his subtle manipulation of Sophia. He started small, leaving his phone unlocked on the kitchen counter, with vague cryptic messages popping up from fake contacts he'd created. One read, "Let me know when we can talk privately." Another said, "Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about it." He watched as Sophia's eyes darted to the screen when she thought he wasn't looking. He could almost see the gears turning in her mind. Who was texting Jack? Was he cheating? The irony was delicious. "Who's that?" she asked one evening, trying to sound nonchalant. Jack smiled. "Oh, just a work thing. You know how it is." The deflection worked, leaving her visibly unsettled. Over the next few days, she became noticeably more irritable, her phone glued to her hand as if to assert control over her own secrets. Jack noticed her slipping into their bedroom more often, no doubt texting Tom, seeking reassurance that their affair was safe. Little did she know, Jack was dismantling it piece by piece. For his next move, Jack sent Tom an anonymous text from the same burner phone. The message was simple. "She's lying to you too. Ask her about James." There was no James, of course, but Jack knew Tom's ego would not let the insinuation slide. A man like Tom, proud and self-assured, couldn't handle the idea of competition. By fabricating a rival, Jack amplified the paranoia he'd already planted. If Tom confronted Sophia about James, it would be proof that Jack's words had taken root. At home, Jack subtly escalated Sophia's doubts about Tom. One night while they watched TV, Jack casually mentioned a colleague's messy affair, and this is the good stuff, and called Jack the next day, and they went to the break room. This break room turned into a relentless castration, comparison, and denial. "You know," he said, leaning back on the couch, "these things rarely end well. The other guy always gets bored, moves on to the next conquest. It's just how these types operate." Sophia didn't respond, but her grip tightened on her wineglass. Jack noticed the subtle tension in her jawline and felt a dark satisfaction. The brilliance of Jack's plan was its complexity. He wasn't just playing one side, he was orchestrating a symphony of suspicion. He knew Tom and Sophia would begin to unravel the moment they stopped trusting each other, and he made sure to keep them guessing. Sophia started staying out later, and when she was home, her attention was divided, her guilt mounting. Jack played the loving husband, never accusing her, always letting her actions speak louder than words. Simultaneously, Tom's behavior shifted too. Jack's occasional anonymous messages, vague hints of Sophia's deceit, made him colder, more distant. Their clandestine relationship, once fueled by passion, was now poisoned by mistrust. So it turns out, by the end of the week, Jack had set the stage for chaos. He knew it wouldn't take much more to make Sophia and Tom implode. But he wasn't ready to stop. There was still more damage to be done, and Jack intended to see his plan through to the bitter end. Jack's plan was in motion, but executing it required precision. It was no longer about gathering evidence or planting doubts. It was about driving Sophia and Tom to a breaking point. Jack knew their fragile affair rested on passion and secrecy, and he was determined to exploit both until it crumbled into dust. The first strike came when Jack, still using the burner phone, sent Tom another message. "If you think you're the only one, think again. She's been meeting someone else. She's good at hiding it, but not that good." "I want to try that," Ned said. "Never tried it," he said. "I want to make a deal with a woman, find out what beating her up." Jack knew this would needle Tom's insecurities. A man like Tom, accustomed to being in control, couldn't ignore such an accusation. Jack was playing a game of emotional chess, and this move forced Tom to question everything. And so it became clear that Tom had no intention of moving. That night, Sophia came home later than usual, her hair slightly disheveled, her perfume lingering heavier than normal. Jack greeted her with his usual calm demeanor, but she seemed distracted, her eyes darting to her phone every few minutes. "Long day at work?" Jack asked, his voice steady. "Yeah," she muttered, avoiding his gaze. Jack leaned in, brushing her shoulder lightly. "You seem tense. Is everything okay?" Sophia forced a smile, but her body language betrayed her. She was unraveling, and Jack relished the subtle cracks forming in her facade. Jack's next move involved social engineering, a skill he had honed in his career. He created a fake social media profile, a generic, attractive man with a professional air. Using this identity, he messaged Sophia on a platform she rarely used, complimenting her profile picture and striking up a casual conversation. He kept the tone light and nonchalant, but with enough charm to pique her interest. Within days, Sophia began responding. Jack knew she was feeding her own ego, indulging in the thrill of being desired without considering the risks. Her responses grew more frequent, and Jack kept screenshots of every exchange. Another layer of ammunition for the inevitable confrontation. Meanwhile, Jack ramped up his psychological assault on Tom. He sent a message under the guise of a scorned ex, claiming to have dated Sophia years ago. "She hasn't changed," the message read. "She plays people against each other. Be careful. She's not as loyal as you think." Jack followed this with a timed call to Tom, leaving a voicemail with a disguised voice. "You should check her recent texts. You'll see who she's really loyal to." Jack didn't need to be in the room to imagine Tom's reaction. Fumbling for his phone, scrolling through Sophia's messages, and letting paranoia take root. To know Sophia, Jack continued to play the loving husband, subtly probing her feelings. Over dinner one evening, he casually remarked, I was reading an article about infidelity today. It said that most affairs aren't about love, they're about insecurity. People cheat because they feel they're not enough." Sophia stiffened, her fork hovering midair. "Why would you bring that up?" she asked, her voice tight. Is something I found interesting," Jack replied smoothly. "Do you think that's true?" She didn't answer, instead focusing intently on her plate. Jack let the silence stretch, knowing her mind was likely racing. He wasn't accusing her outright. He was letting her own guilt do the heavy lifting. The tension between Sophie and Tom reached a boiling point when Jack delivered the coup de grace. He sent Tom an anonymous photo he had staged, a blurry image of Sophie entering a coffee shop with an unfamiliar man. The man was a random stranger Jack had strategically positioned to look like a potential rival. The accompanying text read, "I thought you should see this. She's been meeting him every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Check her calendar if you don't believe me." Tom couldn't resist. His accusations toward Sophia came swiftly, and Jack, watching from the sidelines, imagined the fireworks that ensued. Their relationship had been built on secrecy and trust, but now both were in tatters. And Sophia's side wasn't faring any better. The fake social media profile Jack created had subtly hinted at meeting up. When Sophia hesitated, Jack, as the mysterious man, became more insistent, subtly questioning her commitment to their connection. The tension Jack created between her desire for validation and her fear of discovery pushed her further into paranoia. She began second-guessing her choices, wondering if she was in over her head. At home, Jack began introducing subtle chaos. He left receipts from expensive dinners on the kitchen counter, dinners he hadn't actually attended but fabricated using a friend's help. When Sophia questioned him, he brushed it off. "All that, just a business meeting," he said, smirking slightly. Sophia's suspicion flared, but she couldn't outright accuse him without revealing her own secrets. She began checking his phone when he wasn't looking, mirroring the very behavior she feared being caught doing herself. By the end of the week, Sophia and Tom were teetering on the edge. Tom, now fully convinced of Sophia's duplicity, began withdrawing. Their once intense passion turned into cold accusations and tense silences. Sophia, desperate to maintain control, started overcompensating, texting him incessantly and making dramatic declarations of love. And Jack watched it all unfold with quiet satisfaction. He knew the implosion was imminent. Every move he made was deliberate, every action calculated to ensure neither of them trusted the other again. His revenge wasn't just about destroying their affair, it was about reclaiming control. And in the midst of their chaos, Jack was the calm, calculating center, watching as his plan came to fruition. The first crack in Sophia and Tom's fragile relationship appeared in the form of a public argument. Jack had timed it perfectly, orchestrating the stage for maximum exposure. Sophia and Tom had agreed to meet at their usual clandestine spot, a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town, but this time, Tom arrived with a simmering storm of suspicion. Jack had ensured it. Earlier that morning, he sent Tom a message under the guise of the anonymous informant. She's been talking about you behind your back, says you're not worth the risk anymore. Maybe it's time to ask her what she really wants." Tom's jaw tightened as he reread the message. By the time Sophia arrived at the cafe, his mood was foul, his ego bruised. He barely let her sit down before launching into accusations. Then Tom spoke his name. "The word got out," said Tom after a few minutes. "It spread like wildfire. It's only a skin—" "Who is he?" Tom demanded, his voice low but sharp. Sophia blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" The guy you've been meeting with." "Don't lie to me, Sophia. I have proof." Her confusion morphed into indignation. "Are you seriously accusing me of cheating on you while we're doing this?" Their voices rose, drawing the attention of nearby patrons. Jack, sitting inconspicuously a few tables away, watched as the argument escalated. Sophia's protests grew shrill, her hands gesticulating wildly. Tom, leaning forward, fired back with scathing remarks, his body language radiating anger and betrayal. It didn't take long for Sophia to storm out, her face flushed with fury and humiliation. Tom followed shortly after, slamming his chair back with enough force to draw the eyes of everyone in the cafe. Jack smirked to himself, sipping his coffee. This was only the beginning. At home, Sophia was a different person. Her confidence, once so unwavering, was now marred by uncertainty. Jack could see it in the way she hesitated when answering his questions, her eyes darting as if searching for hidden traps. "How was your day?" he asked casually that evening, watching her pick at her dinner. "Fine," she mumbled, her usual vibrant energy noticeably absent. Jack let the silence stretch, letting her discomfort fester. "You seem distracted." "I'm not," she snapped, a little too quickly. Jack shrugged, as if her response didn't matter, but he knew it did. Sophia was unraveling, and Jack intended to pull every loose thread. Tom, meanwhile, was drowning in doubt. Jack had pushed him into a corner, bombarding him with anonymous messages that stoked his paranoia. "She's been planning this for months. You're just a fling to her. Ask her about James, see how she reacts." Tom couldn't take it anymore. His text to Sophia became increasingly erratic, veering between desperate pleas and harsh accusations. She responded defensively at first, then angrily, refusing to answer his incessant calls. Their conversations devolved into shouting matches, each one eroding what little trust remained between them. Jack's next move came in the form of a package delivered to Tom's office. Inside was a printed series of fake chat transcripts Jack had fabricated, messages that made it appear as though Sophia was flirting with another man. The conversations were laced with just enough truth to be believable, peppered with references to her life that only someone close to her would know. Sophia found 8.4 million views on TikTok, which is a lot more than most people could achieve in a year. But Sophia also had a pretty good reason for believing in it. Tom stared at the pages, his hands trembling. He didn't need more evidence, but here it was, glaring at him in black and white. His mind spiraled, filling in the blanks with worst-case scenarios. His rage boiled over, and he called Sophia immediately. "I saw the messages," he barked the moment she answered. "What messages?" she replied, genially perplexed. "Don't play dumb with me, Sophia." "You'd think I wouldn't find out after everything we've been through?" Sophia's frustration bubbled over. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're being paranoid." "I'm done with your lies," Tom growled, hanging up before she could respond. At home, Sophia tried to maintain her composure, but Jack could see the cracks widening. She spent more time locked in their bedroom, her phone glued to her hand. He pretended not to notice, even as he saw the notifications piling up on her screen. Missed calls, unread messages from Tom. One evening, Jack took a different approach. While Sophia was in the shower, he placed a small envelope on the nightstand. Inside were printouts of fake receipts for expensive dinners and hotel stays under her name. Jack knew she would find them and assumed Tom had sent them as part of his vendetta. When she emerged from the bathroom, her face pale and tense, Jack feigned concern. "You okay?" he asked. She didn't answer, but he noticed her clutching the envelope tightly. Her silence spoke volumes. The final straw came during one of Sophia and Tom's last arguments. Tom, unable to cope with his festering insecurities, accused her of using him, of toying with his emotions while planning to leave him all along. Sophia, insulted and cornered, lashed out with words she couldn't take back. "You're nothing to me, Tom. You were just You were an escape. That's all you ever were." Tom's silence was deafening. He stared at her, his face contorted with a mixture of heartbreak and rage, before walking away for good. Back at home, Sophia was a shell of herself. Her affair, once intoxicating and exhilarating, was now a smoldering heap of regret and bitterness. Jack, ever the doting husband, waited patiently for the moment she would collapse under the weight of her mistakes. When it came, it was glorious. Sophia broke down one evening, her sobs echoing through their quiet home. Jack wrapped his arm around her, feigning comfort, while hiding the triumph in his eyes. He had done it. He had turned her lover into her enemy, leaving her isolated and broken. The final act would be his moment to walk away, leaving her to deal with the ruins of her choices. Jack had always been a man who calculated every move, and this final phase of his plan was no exception. The fallout of Sophia and Tom's ruined affair was more satisfying than he had anticipated, but he wasn't done yet. He wasn't merely content with tearing the relationship apart. He wanted to close this chapter of his life with a sense of finality, leaving Sophia to confront the wreckage alone. The day Jack decided to confront Sophia, the house was unusually quiet. The air felt heavy, almost like the calm before a storm. Jack stood in the doorway of their living room, watching her as she sat curled up on the couch, staring blankly at her phone. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying. Whatever she was looking for on that screen, it wasn't giving her the answers she needed. "Shit. Whatever. Something wrong?" Jack asked, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. Sophia flinched slightly but tried to compose herself. "No, just tired." Jack nodded, moving to sit across from her. He let the silence stretch, watching her squirm under his gaze. Then, with deliberate precision, he reached for the manila envelope he had prepared days earlier. He placed it on the coffee table between them. "What's that?" Sophia asked, her voice trembling. "Open it," Jack replied, his tone calm but firm. She hesitated before picking up the envelope. Her hand shook as she pulled out the contents. Photos, chat transcripts, and receipts. Her eyes widened as she sifted through the evidence. Every lie she thought she had buried was now laid bare. "Jack, don't," he interrupted, his voice cold. "Don't insult me by trying to explain. I know everything." Sophia's lip quivered, but she said nothing. Jack leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "I could have confronted you the moment I found out," he continued. "But I wanted you to feel what it's like to be deceived, to live with doubt and paranoia." "Did you enjoy it?" She opened her mouth to respond, but he cut her off again. "No, don't answer that. I already know." The divorce papers came next. Jack slid them across the table with a pen, his actions deliberate and final. "I'm done," he said simply. "This marriage, this life we built, it's over." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "Jack, please, we can fix this." Jack laughed, a hollow sound that carried no warmth. "Fix it? You didn't even respect me enough to be honest. And you think there's something left to fix?" Sophia broke down, sobbing into her hands. Jack watched her for a moment, his emotions surprisingly subdued. He had expected to feel anger, maybe even sadness. Instead, all he felt was relief. A weight lifted from his chest. "Sign the paper, Sophia," he said, his voice unwavering. "It's time for both of us to move on." After Sophia's sign, Jack didn't linger. He packed his belongings swiftly, methodically. As he loaded the last of his things into his car, he paused to look at the house one last time. It had once been a symbol of their shared dreams, but now it felt like a prison he was finally escaping. In the weeks that followed, Jack began rebuilding his life. He threw himself into work, picking up new projects and reconnecting with old friends. For the first time in years, he felt like himself again, free from the lies and emotional manipulation that had clouded his marriage. Sophia, on the other hand, was left to deal with the consequences of her actions. Her lover, Tom, had completely severed ties, refusing to speak to her after their explosive final argument. Alone and ostracized, Sophia had no one to turn to but herself. The weight of her choices bore down on her, and Jack knew that was punishment enough. One evening, as Jack sat on his new balcony, overlooking the city skyline, his phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. The message read, "I'm sorry for everything. I never meant to hurt you." Jack stared at the words for a moment before deleting the message. He didn't need an apology, nor did he care for one. His life was moving forward, and Sophia was the chapter he had already closed. Months later, Jack attended a networking event where he ran into an old friend, Lisa. She was vibrant, confident, and easy to talk to. They spent the evening catching up, laughing over shared memories and exchanging stories about their lives. By the end of the night, Jack felt something he hadn't in a long time: hope. As they exchanged numbers and promised to meet for coffee, Jack realized that this was what freedom felt like. It wasn't about revenge or making someone pay for their mistakes. It was about reclaiming his own happiness, about taking the pieces of his life and building something new, something better. And Jack walked away from the event that night with a spring in his step, ready to embrace the future. For the first time in years, he felt whole, and as he left his past behind, he knew he would never let anyone take that from him again.